All right. So, how to manage an inheritance. Maybe you all out there have received an inheritance at some point or know you're going to receive an inheritance. Um, and the reason I had to let you know about blended family, um, learning more areas of wealth, and learning what to do with wealth. Um, it's all going to tie together because the added stress that I mentioned in my last video about life is now I got to ensure that this inheritance remains an inheritance. Now, there's a lot of states in the U.S. that does not consider, and I live in one of them, that does not consider inheritance as marital property. So this is where the added stress comes in because now you have to keep that separate and make sure that there's paper trails for legal purposes. Now, it's hard to do this when you have a lot of people that are trying to use scripture to tell one how to be married, how to be financially responsible, etc. I'm not saying the Bible doesn't say. I'm not saying that it does say. It can be confusing, okay? And mainly with blended families, right? If you're in an organic marriage, I pray that it lasts. I pray the best over everyone who's in their first and only marriage. But unfortunately for most of us, we're either left single again, or we're in a second and some even more marriages. So with that comes its own challenges. And I know there's a lot of blended families out there. They do finances that whatever works for them together. Okay. There's no wrong way to eat a Reese's, and there's no wrong way to do finances. Now, some of you hardcore, Old Testament people are going to say, oh, you're not a marriage unless you combine everything. I'm not here to debate that. I'm basically wanting to give y'all information, stuff to think about if you do have an inheritance, and to let y'all know that, and depending on what state you're in, inheritance is not considered marital property. So there's things that you have to do if you want to keep that and safeguard that. First and foremost, whoever passed on and left that inheritance to you, whether it was a parent, a grandparent, a close friend, whatever the situation is, however you're gaining this inheritance, they loved you enough to leave that to you. Okay? I have to remind myself of that some days. And you want to safeguard that because in my case, I've got two small kids that are not anywhere close to adulthood that I have to think about and be mindful of. I don't have any diagnosis, prognosis, or anything, but I have thought about, well, what if something happens to me before they're adults? So I think someone should have the wisdom to consider some things. And my mom had certificates of deposit, or CDs, and they gain interest over time, and you get to set those up however long you want, and you park your money there, and it earns more interest than a traditional savings account. So a method one could use is when the CD matures, and you can take the interest off of that and use it however you want. And the way I did that was, I was like, okay, I don't feel comfortable making a big purchase or even using that money just yet. But what I can do is if I can be a good steward with that money and I can make that money grow money, create more money, then I feel more comfortable spending the money that I use my brain to help create than just to touch the principal. So when a CD matures, I rake off the interest and I re-roll the principal. So let's just say you have $50,000 and you put it in a 13-month CD at 3.5%. Whatever that interest is, I'm not doing the math right now, but whatever that interest is, let's just say somewhere around $5,000 or $6,000. If that much, maybe $4,000 or $5,000. At the end of the term, let's just say 13 months. Well, you rake off that $4,000 to $5,000, and maybe you take a vacation with it. Maybe you save it somewhere else, or maybe you just keep it for a rainy day. Whatever you choose to do with it, there's that. That's money that you have accessible that you did not go out here and trade 8 hours of your life for. Your money setting and you being patient and letting it grow has now created some money. And go enjoy that, right? You can't, hoarding it all is not going to do any good. There's an old saying, no sense in being the richest person in the cemetery. So enjoy life a little bit, but don't enjoy yourself to where now retirement happens, or now you're old and you did too many, went to too many pool parties, or you took too many trips, and when you was younger, and now you have nothing left to show for it. So life is about creating balance and showing that you have the patience to wait for a CD to mature. Makes it that much sweeter whenever you cash it out and go do whatever it is you intend to do with it, and you don't lose any of your principal. Whereas if you had $50,000 and you go, well, I'm going to go spend $1,000, well, that now you're down to $49,000. So unless you put money back in there to replenish it, it's just going to keep dwindling till there's nothing left. Or if you have so much money in there, let's just say you're a multi-millionaire and you stop pursuing the growth of that money and you got $1 million. Well, you're probably going to go splurge a little bit or take a more expensive vacation, and it's going to dwindle. And either you're going to pass away and whatever's left is left, or you run it out to zero. So if you're not a good steward with it, it's going to just dwindle instead of replenish itself. So if you do go back to the first method, and that is open up a $50,000 CD for 13 months, let it grow, and then you take off the principal, you're still going to have $50,000 to open up a new CD at the new rate and re-roll the principal. You've not touched any of that $50,000. You've only taken the principal. So the next thing you can do to safeguard your inheritance is open up what's called a trust. Especially this works good if you have two small kids. Now the handcuff to that, or the negative to that, is you actually have to appoint someone that you trust. That's why it's called a trust. You have to appoint someone to be over that, to ensure that if something happens to you, that your wishes in regard to that trust are carried out. And see, right now, my two small kids are young. They're under 18. So if something happens to me while they're still young, then the court of law is going to appoint their next guardians as their sole caregivers. This could lead into problems because if the inheritance now is under the control of their appointed guardian, whether that's your spouse or whether it's your ex-spouse, who's to say that they don't burn through that nest egg or that inheritance for the purposes of raising the child? And then whenever your children get old enough to, you intend for this wealth to be passed on to your youth, there could be no wealth left for them by the time they reach adulthood. So regardless of what you teach them, they have nowhere to implement it, because all of the inheritance has been spent by their custodial parent, maybe they justify a new home purchase or a new car purchase or a new whatever purchase as means to raise the child. Or maybe they do something which I would say mediocrely good, and that's pay for colleges or pay for all the sporting events that they do in their youth. Either way, if this child does not go on to be a pro whatever they're doing player or pro whatever and be able to earn money with that, then it's gone. It's gone. Some of these vacations that people take are borderline a waste because they pay an inflated price to go on it and say, oh, I went there. But when you're back from the vacation, the money's spent, and yeah, you have the memories. Maybe you have the pictures, but it's done. It's over with. You're back to whatever you was doing before. And that's the, trickery that time sometimes has is you take a week's vacation and you go someplace for a week, that week is going to pass and you're going to be right back to where you was. And whatever money is gone. But once it's gone, it's gone. So the trust can ensure that whatever you do under that umbrella or whatever you do with that account, that nobody besides who that account is intended for can have it. And you can set an age range to where, like I would set mine up to where once my children turn 25, they can inherit the funds. And there's several reasons why I picked 25, but I won't go into them on this video. But you get to decide. You could decide whatever age you want your children to access that inheritance. Another thing you can do with an inheritance is invest in real estate. I looked for ways that I could safely manage this money without dwindling it. Ideally, I want that inheritance to grow. And there's a couple of ways that I've discovered are more surefire ways of growing that. And one is investing in CDs, because you open a CD with a principal, it gains interest over time, and you can do what you want with the interest. So there's method number one. Method number two I discovered is real estate. You can take some of that money, that principal, and you can buy a secondary property and then rent that secondary property out, which I've done the math. I mentioned I inherited my mother's house. Well, I'll throw out some real numbers here. I'll share with you this. And this is the other lie and scam in life. And that is, we tend to look at real estate, especially real estate that was purchased years ago when the real estate market was cheaper. And we go, oh, wow, they bought that house for that much and it's now worth this. And we get so excited about that. We get so wrapped up into that. Well, I did the math on my mother's property, in my mother's house. My mother had a regular starter home, just a basic home, brick ranch home, no garage, no basement, no anything. And my mother purchased her home in the year 2000 for $70,000. Well, I just sold the home for $190,000. So after closing costs and expenses, you factor that in. So we'll just say $180,000 is what I walked away with. Doing the math on that, in 2000, that's 25 years ago, that house made $110,000 in 25 years. And somebody, oh, wow, that's so cool. So I did the math. In the same 25 years, if mom would have rented that house out, if she would have bought the house and rented it out, that house would have made triple. So I factored it at, and even because you're going to have some years where the market's down, you can't charge arm and leg rent. Then you have other years to where you have inflation and you can charge a little bit more for rent. So I averaged everything out at $1,000 a month. So $1,000 a month for 25 years, that came out to be like $320 $25,000, $330,000, something like that. I did the math several days ago. I don't want to be exact. Matter of fact, I don't have a calculator on me. I do it right now, but it was over $300,000. We'll just say that. So in 25 years, in the same 25 years, she could have made $300,000 on a house as opposed to $110,000 on a house. So, and yes, you're going to have reconditioning in there. You're going to have maybe some damage that occurs. That's just par for the course. You're going to have maybe some repair costs in there. Well, if you live in a home, you're out those repair costs anyway, right? You're going to have to replace a roof on your own home if you buy one. You're going to have to replace the water heater. Eventually, those things break and those things happen. So, as far as being a landlord, you're going to be out those expenses anyway, whether you live in it or whether you rent it out. So, but renting a home out or having real estate rental property is going to be the bigger return on investment. And that's also a method to park your money, and whatever you purchase your home for, you just got to wait for the market. It's going to appreciate in value. I think the new national rate of appreciation is like somewhere around 4% a year on a home, that it appreciates somewhere around 4% a year. Now, obviously, what goes up must come down. So you're going to have a period of time, if you own the home a long period of time, to where the markets are going to be on what they call a downturn. And maybe that wouldn't be the ideal time to sell the home outright. But the home is going to get you double value because it's going to appreciate whatever the home is going to appreciate for, and it's going to create rental income. Some people are long-term renters. Some people are just, I want to rent this property out, make a certain amount on it, and then I'm going to turn around and sell it and move on and buy another property. They want variety in their life, and that's okay too, however you choose to do it. But that is a method. But you can also buy the house under the trust. So you create a trust to safeguard the cash, and then you purchase the home out of the trust, and that's another method to safeguard your real estate purchase. Because that way, if God forbid something happens, you do go through a divorce, you're not going to have to get rid of that property because it's not considered marital property. The other way you can get around that, and that's if you just check your local state rules and laws, is you purchase the property through the estate account, the account that you inherited. Because then now it is still tracked because the property was purchased with funds in that account, and it can be tracked. That way, it's not considered marital property. Also, you want to refrain from withdrawing funds from the inherited account and depositing them in either your personal account or your marital account. Because once the funds are brought out of the inheritance account and they're put into a joint account, that now has just became marital property, and you're not going to have a lot of proof, or it's not going to have a trail to track that back. So it can become stressful when you're trying to operate as a married couple and make purchases. You don't want to use any of those inherited funds, because if you do, once you do, that just became marital property. Not the whole account, but just the funds used in a marital capacity. So these are things to think about. And a couple last quick things is, maybe if you're single out there and you're like, well, I don't plan on getting married here soon, and I just inherited this and I just dropped it all in my account, you might want to reconsider that. Because someone who's single and they receive an inheritance and then they go, hey, I'm not getting married anytime soon, I'm just going to just combine it with and put it all in my account, then what happens is, once you get married, those funds lose their ability to trace back, or the line just keeps getting thinner. So the goal is to keep crisp lines on that inheritance so that you can show, this was inheritance. This is not my worth. This is not my salary. This is not that. And that way you can safeguard it, and then your next step is to teach your children how to do what you've been doing. Open up and talk to them. Hey, that vacation we just took last year, it was a CD that your grandmother left, and out of money that your grandmother left, and I took those funds and took us here. There's things that as a spouse, and please don't get offended, if you are a spouse of someone who received an inheritance, try not to get offended, because they're trying to safeguard that for their children and their children's children. And maybe they're trying to grow it so that the generational wealth can pass on. And, I don't want my children to have to go out here and slave 8 hours a day for someone else with the risk of being let go just because the company's trying to save their bottom line, and then have to start all over, especially after investing maybe years of their life. So if this gives them an ability to have a life and not have to trade their time for it, then maybe there could be more joy found. There's more room, there's more time, there's more joy. Because not only is it money freedom, it's time freedom. It frees up your time. You get more of your time to go do other things, or pursue things that you enjoy. And maybe you can get paid by doing some things that you enjoy. Because I know that don't always work out either. Just pursue your passion, and money will follow. Not in every case. I know that. But at least you can afford to do your passions, because there's enough income coming in to maybe pay your rent, or to pay your mortgage, or to pay your whatever. Because with time that you're not out here having to be at a job to earn money, the money that's just naturally flowing in can cover some expenses and take a load off of your life. So I just wanted to give you all some knowledge that I've learned and uncovered, and maybe this could help someone else out that's maybe either in the same situation as me or somewhere close to where I'm at. But anyway, thanks. God bless. This is not financial advice. I'm not saying go do this, don't do that. I'm just saying I just gave you those things for you to think about for your life. Thanks, y'all. Have a great day. God bless.